What's up guys, this is ScherBR talking and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'll be making a full review for the Romancing Festival Bertrand banner. That is the second part of the school celebration. Bertrand is a full shadow, heat and cold damage dealer and also a counter specialist. Bokhohn is a blunt damage dealer that relies on RNG for very big damage, and Valdor is a slash and blunt damage dealer that can give you BP generation on reverse and also decreases damage taken to the party via Screw Guard and defense boost. Well, we shall talk about the summon. This time this banner also has discount for paid gens, so if you have paid gens and want to use them on this banner, there's no off banners for you. Now starting with Bertrand. Well, Bertrand has the highest intelligence right now in the game with 122%. His will and endurance are actually pretty good for someone that is kind of a mage. And his agility is 86%, that's not so high. He still has some STR because of past inheritance, but you shouldn't totally ignore any physical attack with Bertrand. Well, he still has a little charisma because he can self-heal as well. Moving on, his first passive is the longest one in the game so far. Start of battle, 13 BP. Nullifies all stun damage. When being directly attacked, he will have a 50% chance to counter with dominant plays. That is an SS power attack with heat and shadow that will recover his HP starting from 1,500. Can be much higher depending on how much status he will buff during the fight. Well, his global access style counters with an S power attack that is column. This one is single target and is heat and shadow instead of heat and cold from global X. Then when landing an attack that is not a chase, he has a 50% chance to chase with Frost Fire Plus. That is a cold and heat attack that will recover his own HP by around 220. Then, when attacking with heat attacks, he will grant himself an attack boost that will increase damage potential by 15%, lasts for 3 turns and stacks, and will also recover his own HP by around 220. When attacking with cold attacks, he will grant himself a defense boost that decreases damage taken by 15%, lasts for 3 turns and stacks, and also recovers 1 BP. When attacking with shadow attacks, he buffs all status by 15%. So there's a lot of different effects with just one passive, and that's why this character comes from the future and they made it even better on global. Well, we need to discuss more stuff to go back here. The second one is Voltage Force 2. He grants himself a heat up, increasing damage potential by 20% for the whole fight, stacks 5 times per battle for a total of 100% damage increase by turn 5. By the end of a turn, he always gets 2 BP as well. The third one is Intrinsic Sword 4. Increases damage potential by 20% when attacked by attacks that will cause resist. You have 40% damage reduction, and there is also 37% chance to evade any attack that will cause resist. We discussed this before. If you have Proof of War Tower and you equip in your character, you have very good chances of just evading most attacks. There is also the important fact about his own resistance. He comes with 15 points for heat, cold, and shadow, so it's very easy to equip Bertrand to achieve evasion. So Bertrand has a lot of things. You can reach 120% damage increase. You will always buff all status when attacking with shadow attacks. You will buff a lot of different effects with heat and cold. And you always have at least the damage reduction from intrinsic, and you get much more just by stacking cold attacks. But now let's talk about the skills, and I'll start with the third one, Tenebrous Glaces. This is a 13 BP skill that has 2 attacks. The first one is Shadow and Cold, and before he even attacks, he casts Morale Up Extreme, increasing his damage potential by 50%. So a double S power attack will feel more like a very strong triple S attack. After this attack, he will then chase with Flamanix, that is an S power attack with both heat and cold damage. This attack will feel more like a double S power attack with high-end power. It also carries a chance to debuff the enemy intelligence by 15% on max level. You should not even care too much about this intelligence debuff, although it may help in some fights. It's all about damage and triggering many different effects with Bertrand. Now, what happens when you use Tenebrous Glaces? You will buff all your status by 15%, and then you get a defense boost and 1 BP. And the second attack will benefit from all status buff, and will then trigger a second defense boost, a second BP, and will also give you 15% attack boost and recover your HP. Then you still have a 50% chance to chase Frost Fire based on the first attack, and that will give you a third BP, a third defense boost, a second attack boost, and a second HP heal, and actually a third HP heal because of Frost Fire itself. So, if you don't get the chase, you still recover 2 BP, get an all status buff, 2 defense boost, 1 attack boost, and 1 HP heal. If you get a chase, you get extra BP, extra defense boost, extra attack boost, and 2 extra HP heals. So on the normal case scenario, you will recover 2 BP, and then another 2 BP by the end of a turn, and then another 3, because you always get 3 as well. So a total of 7 BP recovered on normal scenarios, and in the case of a chase attack, you recover 8. That's right, 7 or 8 BP recovered just by use of Tenebrous Glaces. And the attack just gave you so much different effects that, well, this is too much. And it's used as a very strong attacker in shadowing squads as well. If you are using him on shadowing squad, he recover either 8 or 9 BP, because on shadow attacks you get a higher damage and another BP gain. That's very good. Now, after you use the Tenebrous Glaces, you will not have BP to use it again right after, so you have to use Frost Fire, that attack that will give you the attack boost, the defense boost. It will give you 1 extra BP, and it will give you extra HP heal and the other HP heal from Frost Fire. So, in this case, without the chase effect, you will guarantee at least 5 BP by the end of a turn. That's right, or even 6 if you chase again with Frost Fire. So, if you consider that the lower case scenario gives you at least 7 BP on the worst case scenario, and you get at least 6 BP on worst case scenario on the second turn, 7 plus 6 means what? 13. So even on worst case scenarios, Bertrand will always have enough BP to use Tenebrous Glaces every 2 times. That's right, some people will not look on this when you do all the calculations, but this guy has a very big firepower because he's increasing all attack, defense, status, self-healing, so even when you forget that he can counter, so he's a top class damage dealer, and well, he competes with people like Silver, I think even Saruin a little, and I don't know if he beats Leon, should not, but well, he does not sacrifice LP like Leon and Silver at least. Besides the single tiger rotation, he has Evanescence. This attack here is just AoE that carries shadow and cold damage, and this one has a HP heal of very small effect, but he's not a good healer anyway. It will heal only 220, and then it carries a 10% chance to recover 1000. That's right, 10% chance to become a Steel Blade Light. But you should kinda ignore this. It's not something you should be using unless we are in a boss fight with multiple targets. That's actually very, very rare. So, we just talked about this character as a main damage dealer, and we didn't talk about him as a counter attacker. Imagine you are buffing all of these different things, and in a fight where he doesn't get a chance to counter. But if he does, Dominant Blaze will recover his HP, starting from 1,500, can scale to become much higher than this. I saw people showcasing 4,000 healing. And with each counter, he will boost all of his status, get an attack boost, and self-heal 220. See, he does not chase with Frost Fire when countering, the game even says that, but imagine, Dominant Blaze is already double S power, and you are buffing a lot of things. This guy will reach very high damage when countering. Sadly, he's locking on a 50% chance to counter. Now, let's talk about his Global Axis style and how different they are. Actually, they can be pretty similar on the counter strategy, because this one will also trigger additional effects when countering, but he's focusing on cold attacks and heat and cold damage mostly. He will buff intelligence whenever he gets hit by direct or indirect attacks, so depending on number of enemies, this one may be more interesting if you want a guaranteed counter. That's the biggest difference when talking about then on counter strategies. But this Bertrand also comes with Blooming Fireworks. He can use it as a BP battery while also helping the party with damage on counter. You can use him on the center of a Rising Phoenix X formation and bring Witch's Daughter and give BP to Bertrand. Bertrand gives BP back to the party and counter. That's how he actually works. The newest one will do more shadow damage, can just work as a main nuker without caring about counter, while this one is either a BP battery with okay damage or a full counter. Both can solo when countering and will work similarly. If you have bad RNG, maybe the new Bertrand will not counter as much. So maybe some people will prefer this one for counter and the other one for full damage. As for inheritance, well, there are actually 3 options. If you have the second style, you can get Frostbite. I think the trade is good because you are losing the attack boost and the very small heal, but you get a 15% buff to all status. Remember, shadow attack, buff, 15% to all status. If you have the Global Axe style, you can inherit Void, but Void should only be used if you have Saruin on the squad as well, because by then you will get 2 extra BP that can be sacrificed by using Void. Void will buff intelligence by 25% and another 15% by passive, so you will scale faster. I don't think Blooming Fireworks makes much sense because you actually want to use that follow-up attack every 2 turns. And for farm, you can inherit Dry Slot, and because this attack here is both cold and shadow, you will buff all your status before you use Nocturnal Shades, but this one is SDR based. I don't know if this one will be important anyway, but depending on the setup versus some farming stages, this can work. And from the S style, you can also inherit Abaddon Hands Plus to use it 2 times in a row for farming. So Bertrand is a very strong damage dealer, but also a counter specialist that rivals the strongest attackers we have in the game right now. He will receive at least a triple S grade. I am not entirely sure if he deserves an OP grade, but some people are saying that, but let's wait and see how much damage he actually performs in some boss fights, and we can change. What do you think about that? Say here on the comment section. But he is a very good resource and will stay strong for the time being. Now, the next character is Bokhohn, and he is a blunt damage dealer that uses clubs. His STR is 118%, it's his highest status, and then he has very similar intelligence, endurance, agility, and will. They are all good, but nothing special. Then for passives, we have Card Magic. When landing this attack called Vanishing Illusion, you have a 50% chance to trigger a 50% increase in blunt damage. You will also have a 50% chance to recover 7 BP, and also a 50% chance to recover HP by around 1,500. That's right, 3 different effects, all of them on 50% chance when using this attack called Vanishing Illusion, and that is his nuke attack. This one has a 10 BP cost, it has 4S power, but it carries delay, so you will not be able to use combos with ease, usually only on overdrive, unless you are carrying many characters with delay. That's unlikely to happen, but by having 4S power, the cost is very good. Although you already have people like Matriarch that has Round Slicer that is 4S power and it's still 10 BP without delay. But let's keep on. When you use the Vanishing Illusion attack, well, if you recover 7 BP, you are able to use Vanishing Illusion again. And if you get that blunt increase, the next time you use this attack, you are going to do more damage. Besides, you still have a 25% chance to recover 10 BP by the end of a turn. Why 10? Because that's exactly what you need to use Vanishing Illusion. 25% is not reliable, but on the flow of battle, it's like having 2.5 BP per turn. Eventually, when you hit the RNG value, you will be able to just keep nuking. Then the third one is called Latent Bloom Attack. damage taken will be reduced by 25% at all times, and grants himself a heat up, increasing damage potential by 10% for the whole fight, has a max stacks of 5 times. Now, Element Enhance can stack 5 times, but, well, it has a 50% chance. The more you nuke, the more chances you have to increase your power. When I was fighting, I managed to trigger this 3 times in a 10 turns, so I don't know if that's similar to average, but it will allow me to do around 400,000 damage in a squad that was buffing. So, it's good, but it's also a lot of RNG in order to rely on something like this. It was designed just to have a trump card, that's right, in Remembrance battle, because that's when you are going to use this guy. At least he has 1 damage reduction passive, and this is the skill that matters. But we have 2 others. We have also IG Stamp, that is a 1 BP attack that has C power and has a chance to debuff Will by 15% on max level. But that makes 0 sense. It would be better if it debuffed Endurance so that he would do more damage. He does not do magical attacks. And you actually may even ignore this skill because Bokhohn only recovers 3 BP naturally. So if you don't get the RNG on your side, it's better to just save everything you have, because you need to get 10 BP in order to use your nuke again. Then we have the second skill, Shotgun Cards, that is just 7 BP cost with C power. Well, you cannot even use this twice unless you are using the Dragon Stance Axe formation. And his damage without the passives and RNG is very bad, so you should not be using this guy for this. So Bokhohn is all about just using Vanishing Illusion and try to use it again as much as possible. A character that works well for Remembrance, but it's locked into only being really useful there. Well, there is a future version of Bokhohn that is kinda similar to his Christmas style, where he is a debuffer that can debuff agility and intelligence and even apply a passive to help the party debuff it as well, but with a chance. He carries a chance to evade, he also has damage reduction and BP generation. Well, it's not even that important of a character, but you know that he has a future. Well, if you want to inherit skills, you have the Christmas style that has Naughty Gift, that has Paralyze and Poison. We work on Real Queen and on Carmine when we get higher levels. It is better to be used on School Bokhohn because he is much better defensively. There's also Mirage Hit that debuffs Dexterity if you do not have any other Dexterity debuffer. And there is also a Crushing Blow to debuff FTR if you do not have any other debuffer as well. But he is much better just doing damage and will work just for that Remembrance battle, and there you can reset as much as you want because you only need to clear it once. But in other challenges, I don't think people will be using Bokhohn all that much. I still believe he deserves an SS Plus grade by raw amount of power and being a club user. If he was any other weapon type, it would be worse, but since we barely have damage dealers for Club Remembrance, he has a chance on Spotlight. The next character is Valdor, and this guy here is now using Great Swords. Yeah, he was a martial artist before, but they still kept a high agility here, 106% and 121 STR. Very high, close to the top. He still has Goodwill, okay endurance and dexterity. With some intelligence because he can inherit some debuffs, but you should not care much about it. Now, for passives we have Master Guidance. On start of battle he will recover 2 BP. And on odd turns, that means 1, 3, 5, 7 and beyond, he will grant himself a fast stance and all of his attacks will come fast. Well, this is strange, should have been actually even turns, but I'll talk more about that later. Also, when landing an attack, he recovers on BP by 1 and will grant all surviving allies a defense boost that decreases damage taken by 15%. That's right, much like Minstrel, this defense boost is locked into 15%. It's not 25 like when using on an active skill. The second passive is called Offense and Defense 2. When all allies are still surviving, reduces damage taken by 20%. That's Crown Guard with extra 10% damage increase to the party. So very nice, because this is something that will work on the start of a fight. You are already decreasing incoming damage, and on some challenges you need lots of defensive layers in order to survive. The extra 10% increase in damage barely matters, but it's there. Then the third one is called Protective Healing. When attacked, damage will be reduced by 30% and by the end of a turn recovers around 220. That's good. Well, 1 damage reduction passive on a character that already has good enough defensive status. Now for skills, the first one is called Pound. This one here is a single target attack with deep power, blunt and slash. Well, it's just so that you don't need to use his normal attack and keep that blunt damage from his martial arts. The second one is called Consecutive Crash Down. This one is an 8 PP attack that hits between 2 to 4 times with C power. Remember that we got some skills in the past that hit it between 2 to 4 times as well, but they had like E power only. Now it's scaling, reaching finally C power. And it has both slash and blunt to better coverage, but well, it's not that good when you are relying on RNG with a character, and at least he can use this every 2 turns. If you decide to use him as a nuker, he will still have that Scrum Guard and will still apply that defense boost while doing damage. May not be a nuker, but has part utility, right? Now, the last skill is his selling point, High Spirit E-Pawn. This is a single target attack with blunt and slash that hits for S damage. It's not that strong, but it's also fast. That means that it will go before enemy attacks. It will also cast Guard Up Medium, decreasing damage taken by 25%, lasts for 3 turns, does not stack with other sources of Guard Up Medium. But now let's talk about the real effect. It will grant all other surviving allies a BP cost reduction of 2 points for 2 turns. That's funny because it's reverse BP generation. By reducing the cost, you will be able to use some skills more often, right? And this guy here is also defensive. He has Scrum Guard and he also has that 15% damage reduction with defense boost. So he's not like Socho that does not boost the defense capabilities. Actually, Socho does by drawing more enemy attacks toward himself, but it's different. For enemies that uses way too much AoE attacks, this Boston will be more interesting because, well, in that case, Socho cannot taunt. And then, look, this is something that should be used together with other skills that also generate BP. He gets only 4 BP per turn. Although he starts with 12, that means that he can actually use this skill on turn 1 and then again on turn 3. After this cycle, you will miss some BP to have this every 2 turns. So it's nice to use this with Water Festival from Noel's Daughter. It's nice to use this with Blooming Fireworks, for example, so that you always have some BP back to Valdor in order to keep casting High Spirit Epon every 2 turns. Different rotation with Valdor because he gets this fast stance on odd turns, and High Spirit Epon is already fast, so you're not getting anything out of this. You can actually start the fight and use Pound first, because that will be fast and will apply the defense boost. And then on turn 2 you use High Spirit Epon, but that means that you are also only giving that BP reduction on turn 2. Maybe you already used high cost skills on turn 1. So there's this constant problem with Valdor when deciding what to do exactly. But if he's fast enough, you do not need to care about the fast stance, he will always go before the enemy. Well, it's a very high status anyway. It will be hard for an enemy to be faster than Valdor, unless it does have fast attacks. But now let's discuss the difference between him and Socho. Like I said, Socho taunts, so that's how he actually helps the party. By taunting, he will reduce the chances of some of your characters being attacked, and he can counter and do damage. But he does not increase the defense of the party. When enemies use AoE attacks, your Valdor will help more. And the synergy is actually very similar to what Socho can do as well. Socho may just give a bigger BP increase on start, but Valdor also helps similarly. People like Muse that can buff and also heal will benefit, because Muse will be buffing with only 3 BP. That means that she gets 2 BP extra, and that surplus can be used in some turns where you want to heal with Freud Fleuret. She heals for almost 2000 in my party. That means that I can actually remove my healer if I can just stop one turn and use Muse to heal. That will be worth. And he will work well with other people that also have good BP generation. he's a good support for Saruin squads as well, because in Saruin squads sometimes you can bring the Rouge that has blooming fireworks, or even Bertrand, because they generate BP by themselves. There is also synergy with Empress. Remember Empress, the latest version of her can inherit from the Christmas style, Christmas Moon. That is a skill that costs a lot, but applies defense boost medium for 4 turns, so you can actually try to stack this more often with the newest version of Fire Empress that I don't have. Other buffers that will work well will be Witch's Daughter. That's right, Witch's Daughter can just actually use her BP on Valdor, and then Valdor will give BP back, so that she can keep using Sweet Spell. Or like I said, Nala's Daughter will work well as well, because she will give BP back to Valdor when she uses Water Festival with her more recent styles. There's also Maria, and she has something interesting since Golden Dragon Dance costs 9 to buff all status, and she can actually sometimes just cast Light of the Sun instead of using a healer, because this will give 2 BP back to the party, and even Boston himself. And, well, she heals, right? You can just remove your main healer, much like the case with Muse. Some other characters that will benefit are also healers, for example, Polka. With his Rag Robin style, we have Steel Blade Phoenix that costs 9, now it will cost 7. Then you can use it with Chef Polka that already gets at least 4 BP and more if he counters. Then you can also use with Liz if you want to decrease the cost of her very good skill, call it Karatsu Water Wall. It will be just 7 now, and she also gets BP back by counter. There is also Katarina. That is a very good style that not many people use, but she has this skill called Ice Force Ballet that decreases the skill damage by 35, and then it will be reduced to only 8 BP, and she has Ice Impact that recovers between 2 to 3 times. It will be only 5 BP cost. That will allow her to actually heal close to some other healers like, well, Polka and some others with a faster way of healing. But now, there are some attackers that will also benefit from Valdor. Let's talk about Chooser, for example. Remember that his attack Cloud Ejection costs 9, then it will be reduced to 7. And once you use it every turn, you will have 3 stacks of a chase. That means that you will recover 7 BP per turn. That means that you got a perfect cycle with Chooser if you can keep Valdor at using that skill every turn. But then again, you need extra help to give BP back to Valdor. Another damage dealer that benefits from this is Mirza. But, well, in the case of Mirza, you may need an extra BP battery as well, because you can just use Silverlight Fangs more often, or if you have, for example, Left Fork Inheritance. Remember, this one costs 13, so it will be something to help Mirza use this more often. But there's just one big problem with using Mirza and some other characters with 0 BP skills. When you use a 0 BP skill, this does not help at all, because, well, it's 0. It will not give you 2 BP back. It will be 0 again. So in those cases with Mirza, it will be better to just use, for example, Heroic Stance when you don't have enough BP. There is also Saruin. Saruin is more interesting because you can actually inherit from his UDX style Sword of Saruin, so that you will always cycle Immortality, that will cost now 11, and Sword of Saruin, instead of using that 0 BP skill, because like I said, you get nothing when using a 0 BP skill. So there's plenty of different characters that will work well, and if you have some other ideas, please share here on the comment section. I'll read them and we can discuss. As for inheritance, we have some options. For example, the latest style has Flying Spiral Fist for 4S damage on turn 1 with Blunt and Pierce, but he only has 10% damage passives. It's not big anyway. Then there's Drill Dash to remove that slash and add Pierce for a 0 BP attack. He also has Cross Drill Driver from a Welfare style that carries an evasive counter stance that every time you counter, you will recover BP by 1 and also has a chance to debuff endurance of the enemy. The counter is both blunt and pierce, so that can be interesting, but the BP generation is not that great. Unless he counters many times, he will not be able to keep using this skill. There is also Vortex Breaker, AoE attack with SS power that has blunt and pierce damage, can be used on turn 2. And Key Meditation in the future will be amplifiable and will recover 3 BP extra, but when Valdor recovers 3 BP, he will not be applying the defense boost. But it does fix his BP generation problem, so that he will always be able to use skill number 3 every 2 turns without relying on an external source. Now, the closest competitors to Valdor will be Gustave in his tank style, and then you will inherit Let's Paint, because Let's Paint, when you actually unleash, will give 2 BP to the party with Usagi, Piggy, and Whistle, alongside many other different effects. Gustave is just better defensively, and can also help out a little with BP generation, but it's not the same case as Valdor. Valdor will not clash directly with Gustave, just that guard up from himself that will not have any effect, since Gustave also applies a guard up medium. But, well, sometimes you will only be able to use one. If you need very high sustain, Gustave may be better. If you can just sacrifice some sustain to help with BP generation, Valdor will also work. The other characters that will work are the latest version of Undine that I don't have, also the latest version of Empress that I don't have, and the latest version of Mistral that will also clash a little with him. But, well, in the end, Screw Guard and Defense Boost stacks with anything. It's all about a matter of perspective, and if you can bring 2 characters with defensive options or just one. So, let's get back to Valdor. I really like him because, unlike Sorcho, he will help better when enemies have AoE attacks, and it's different. Well, you can just decide when it's better to use one or the other, but just remember that there is Shirei. Shirei is the future protagonist that we can actually probably get it by December, and he gives 10 BP to the party. He also has a damage reduction passive applied to the party, can buff and give some other effects, and most people summon for him. But one does not remove the other. Because of Screw Guard and Defense Boost, they can just use it together depending on the situations, but it may be overkill. So if you don't like Valdor and wants to skip now, just know that you will be able to play with some BP generations as well. Valdor has that problem, like I said, that if your characters have 0 BP skills, that will not help then, and Sorcho will be better in those other situations. But I like versatility, I like to play with very unique characters, and I do believe there is some value on them. Valdor being defensive guarantees that he receives a SSS grade in a tier list, and actually will be very useful for Remembrance as well, since we barely have support for Great Swords. Now, back to the banner image. Is this banner worth summoning for? Yes, I will be giving it a Silver Plus award. It works for both newcomers and veterans, because we have a premium damage dealer, Bertrand, that gets a new weapon on an event, so you don't need to craft a specific one. He is a premium damage dealer that works in any squad, does not need inheritance, does even more damage on sudden squads, and can be used as a counter specialist. Then we have Valdor, a character that applies 2 defensive layers to the party while also helping with BP generation. And Bokhohn, a character that, although relies on RNG, can be used as your only damage dealer for Remembrance and solve the problem for many different players. So there's value to be had in this banner for both newcomers and veterans. And I pull it on this banner, still didn't get my Bertrand, but I will eventually. And if you want to skip, it's also okay, because if you already have Global X Bertrand, you already have counter. And if you have Sorcho, you already have EP generation. And if you want to skip Valdor because you want to summon for Shirei when he gets released, he will also just do a similar job. Bokhohn can also be replaced easily by any other club damage dealer that can nuke in the future. But that's my opinion. What is yours? Please say here on the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't, and if you want to support the channel, there are links on the description of the video. I want to see you soon in the next video. Bye!